sound of success. We've finally fixed all the fuel issues on the 928. Stay tuned to see what we did. Thanks for tuning in to the latest edition of Grime Time with Rudy. Good news and finally some forward progress on risky business, our 1985 32-valve Porsche 928S. We recently completed a full service which included a timing belt, a port contentioner upgrade, along with a complete tune-up. And while we got the car started, we had fuel problems from the get-go. All the fuel problems culminated into a no-start issue. Had to push the car back into the garage. So in the last video, we showed you what was basically a disintegrated fuel tank to fuel pump hose. We had basically lacquer sitting in the gas tank. We knew we had to replace the fuel strainer and the hose that leads from the bottom of the fuel tank into the fuel pump. Once again, another week lost waiting for parts. Now that they came in, Nick and I got together on Monday and put everything in. So let me take you through now what we did and what we ran into. Before I get into what we're doing here, you'll notice that the light, my red light, shop light, is actually wedged between the fuel tank strap and the gas tank. What I'm not showing here is video of me loosening the 13mm bolts that hold that left side tank strap and the right side. I wanted to avoid removing the tank if I could, because that would just lead to more hoses that we would need to order if we didn't really need to. By loosening the two rear bolts, we were able to lower the gas tank holding strap system, which includes that plate just below the gas tank outlet. I tried to put a 17mm deep well onto the thing, but quickly realized that the nut for that strainer was just gummed up. This tray, this design on these early 928s, it just basically is an accumulator for dust. I'm lucky that the thing didn't rust out. Now you see me just digging out years, likely 35 years of gunk. And you can see again, if you watch the last video, the brown that is in that fuel strainer. So here I am putting the 17mm wrench on, and before I go any further, you read all over the internet about how these things may spin. So we were really careful about doing it. I sprayed, about 2 days before I sprayed PB blaster on the back side of it. We were just hoping for the best here, and finally we did get a break. Was not torqued down on that, and it just spun right out the way you would hope. And I just took my time taking this out ever so carefully, as I didn't want that insert to start spinning, because we'd have a whole host of problems, and we would have to remove the tank at that point to put in another insert and fix a new problem from once we lucked out a little bit here. So here is, look at this. That is the fuel strainer. It was just muck. I have it in a plastic bag, but I don't even want to show it. It's just, so you can clearly see that just glazed over gasoline that's gone very bad, and it's literally like lacquer now. So now with that out, now you see more of the lacquer that's at the bottom of the tank. So we knew we would have to flush this, and clearly this is what was causing the hard start and being able to keep the car running. Now we have a drain bucket underneath. We had to access the gas tank from the top side, and the plan here was remove the sending unit. This is the fuel tank sending unit here, and the breather tube. So first job here, pretty straightforward. There's a clip, Jubilee clip, I think the Brits call it, and then always good for a second set of hands. Nick was there to push on the screwdriver while I gently tried to remove a 35-year-old hose without damaging that. And slowly we just worked our magic in it and got the hose off. So we were good there. You can see we removed the sending unit signal, and then using a pair of channel locks, I was able to unscrew the sending unit cap nut for lack of a better term. We tried hand loosening it, but the channel locks really came in handy here. Just slowly got that off. And that came off. Now we had to spray this with PB Blaster, and to get as what we quickly found was the sending unit was still stuck to the gasket on the top of the tank. So we sprayed that with a little PB Blaster, let it set, and then I've edited this a little bit, but now you see it's able to turn. Now we had to just slowly and carefully pry it with a couple of screwdrivers to make that pop off. And luckily we didn't damage anything. So here's the sending unit pulling out, and of course forgot there might be gasoline in it. So all right, so an important safety tip I didn't mention at the beginning. While we were doing this, the garage door you see behind me was open in the cold weather, and the ground strap on the battery we disconnected, and of course we couldn't run any heater out, anything out here. Use caution with gas. Even though this is old gas at this point, it's still it could be flammable, so you have to treat it with kid gloves. Now with the sending unit out, that allowed us to pour fresh gas in from the top to flush out the junk on the bottom. And that's what you're seeing here. And you can see we just did 2 or 3 gallons there. Moving on, now we were going to disconnect the sending unit because we were getting a bad signal and wanted to see if we could clean this up. At first I thought it was a flat-bladed screw, but then it turned out to be a 5mm, I think, nut on the end of this contraption. And I was able to get that nut off after a little PB Blaster. And now this cylinder holds the 3 piano wires in the contraption that actually checks the level of the fuel. Okay, so here we are. I'm taking the nut off on we're trying to get the sending unit broken apart, and here it comes, and just more bad news. You can see one of the piano wires that controls the float was already broken, and just look at 35 years of sludge. Sending unit won't move. That's why we're not getting a signal. It was locked at half a tank, as you can see. So now we don't have a sending unit. We decided, okay, let's rip this apart and put the cap back in so we could at least get the car running. So that easily broke off. And then that tube, I wasn't going to put a dirty tube back in the car. Basically hacksawed off the top of it. And I'm going to order a replacement sending unit from our buddy Roger at 928s. Anyway, that clicking noise you hear is a fuel injector. We got everything back together. We tried to start the car, and nothing. What we found was now, because we had shifted things around on the gas tank and moved the bracket, apparently we dislodged something in the wiring because the car wouldn't start. So we worked our way back. We started at the fuel rail on the engine and cranked the car. No gas coming out of the fuel rail. Worked our way back, found there was no gas coming out of the fuel pump when we cranked it. Worked our way back further, cranked it with the fuel filter open, and no fuel. Removed the fuel pump, the new fuel pump that we just put in a week earlier, put that on a bench test, and it spun fine. So it would work on the bench with 12 volts DC, but then would not work in the car. We put our leads on the wires that go to the pump, and oddly enough, there was no power now to it, even when we put a jumper wire in. Now, apparently when we moved the tank straps and whatnot, and we clearly did something. So reached out to Roger at 928s or us, stumped him, because if you put that jumper wire between pins 30 and 87, power should go to directly to the pump and bypass everything else. Because that was not doing that, that would suggest we had a shunt somewhere in the circuit. Luckily, the fuel pump is it's a DC motor with a fairly straightforward circuit. A couple of people on Renlist said, well, we're probably going to have to pull the panel. Might be a loose wire or mouse eating a wire behind it. I didn't want to go there. We wanted to avoid that at all costs. So yesterday, I studied the wiring diagrams and put my multimeter on pins 30 and 87 like we use for that jumper wire. And I confirmed that the panel was getting 12 volts when I jumper that. That was the good news. That said, I would not have to, that would suggest, wouldn't have to pull the panel. The next place I wanted to look at was the ground strap location in the back by the passenger side tail light. I took apart, there's about 12 wires that go into the ground bolt for that. I took that apart, sanded the body a little bit, just to rough it up, and did all the terminals. Honestly, it did not look that bad to me. I sprayed it with a little WD-40 between the 3 or 4 pigtails, put everything back together. Sure enough, I had power again to the fuel pump. So I quickly put everything back together. You heard the starting sequence. The car fired right up once the gas was primed. I'm feeling very confident we've got the fuel issues from the tank and the fuel pump behind us, and we're going to take it for a quick maiden voyage. I thought today I would go register the car now that I know the engine runs and we can move it around a little bit. And this is January 20th today here in Jersey. I went to our local DMV, and because of COVID, I have to, even though there's one about 2 miles from here, DMV that is, they are only doing certain things like driver's licenses and testing there. I have to go 30 miles out of my way, and I had to make an appointment to register a car. And the earliest appointment I could get is February 5th. So welcome to Jersey. It's just crazy times. And so anyway, it's just delay after delay after delay. Between all of us, I'm going to take one of the QQ plates. That's a classic car plate from my 84 Eldorado. I'm going to throw that on, and we're just going to drive around a little bit. That's the latest and greatest. We finally have the 928 up and running. We can finally move forward with fixing some of the leaks on it and really start going to town. If you enjoyed this video, please press the like button. And if you're enjoying the series, please press the subscribe button. Tomorrow, Nick and I are going to take the Risky Business out for its maiden voyage, so I should have some content loaded up by Thursday or Friday. Thanks again for watching. Stay safe, and we'll see you soon.